Hello, hello, hello. I'm Matt Williamson at Williamson NFL, and your Steelers are 7-2. It was a tough-fought game. What I thought was a pretty evenly played game. That you probably get out of this with a victory 50% of the time. You know, something along those lines. And then, again, this is just my first reaction, as always, on Sunday nights. But I felt like there were probably 7 or 8 gigantic plays in this game that were the difference one way or another. They didn't all go the Steelers' way, but they made plays when they had to. And I got a lot of observations. We'll dig into it much deeper tomorrow, including snap counts and things of that nature. But this is a big win against what I think is an absolutely a quality opponent in the Washington Commanders. And I told you, leading up to my prep for this game, I gained more and more respect for Washington as we went. So I think they're going to be in it. I think these are 2 playoff teams. I'm not suggesting they're going to meet again, but I do think this is 2 playoff teams, and the second half of the season is officially here. So as we often do, I'm going to go through some of the stats, the stuff that stood out to me at the half when Washington was leading 17-14. At that point, Wilson had only completed 7 of 15 for only 48 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, but he only had 48 passing yards at the half. Daniels wasn't much better, though. He was only 9 of 16 for 78. Only 1 rush for 4 yards. First downs at that point, 13-9 Steelers. Third downs was a problem for both. They both had 7 opportunities. Washington converted 3. Steelers converted 2. The Steelers were officially 0 for 1 on 4th down, but that was one of the 7 or 8 crazy big plays, turning plays, and that was obviously the dropped punt. And I want to address that real quick. I mean, I'm sure this is how that went, is we have an alert on if no one's going to guard our gunners, we're going to throw it to them. So, I mean, I don't think they went out there saying, we're going to run a fake punt deep in our own end, that if we screw it up is going to cost us points. I think it was, no one's covering this guy. All we have to do is throw the ball to him, and Killebrew throws the ball well. I've seen him do that in practice a fair amount. And all you got to do is catch it. And I think most high school kids catch that. I mean, it just didn't go your way. It was a terrible play by Pierre. Anyways, the half, Washington led in total yards, 113 to 97. But the Steelers had more rushing yards, 57 to 43. Yards per play, only 2.9 for the Steelers in the first half. 3.5 for Washington, though. I mean, offensive sledding was tough. Each team had a sack at that point as well. Steelers had 3 penalties for 40. Washington had 2 for 29. Time of possession, though. I mean, and this goes along with the rushing yards. Steelers were at 16:39 compared to 13:21. And Washington had 1 turnover. Steelers didn't have any, although that fake punt failure is really the same as a turnover, of course. And theirs was the muff punt. Of course, the final score is 28-27. Wilson finishes the day pretty respectable, though, stat-wise. Not his best day. We'll get to that. But 14 of 28 for 195. 3 touchdowns. Remember, he throws touchdowns. 1 interception. 4 carries. At least one of those was a kneel down for 3 yards. Daniels was, again, right around 500. Both these guys were right around 500 completion percentage. 17 for 34 for only 202. This is huge, though. He had 3 carries for 5 yards. Steelers did a really good job of not giving him lanes. A really good job. Warren was 14 for 66. Harris was 21 for 53. Not the greatest efficiency, but you get 35 carries between your top 2 backs. It's probably a good sign. McLaurin was a stud in this game. 5 for 113. More on him later as well. Pickens was also really impressive. 5 for 91 and a touchdown. 2 tackles for loss each for Queen, who I thought played his best game and is really starting to step up. That's encouraging. And the new member of the team, Preston Smith, 2 tackles for loss. Cam Hayward had 2 big sacks and was, again, awesome in this game. Fowler had 2 sacks as well for Washington. He's had a good year. He's a former top 7 or 8 pick, something like that, who's really rejuvenated himself there, but not great for the Steelers. First downs, 21 to 19. Steelers. Third down wasn't great for either team. 7 of 16, 5 of 14 for Washington. Fourth down, same as before, except Washington was 0 for 1. Steelers were 1 of 2. The punt was the one that got screwed up, but they converted the other. They ran 75 plays, though, compared to 59 for Washington. And I think that had a lot to do with the win in the end. I mean, just body blows. 312 yards versus 242 for Washington. Yards per play were about equal, 4-2 to 4-1. Each team had 3 sacks. But rushing yards. You finished the day with 140 rushing yards. Tough earned. Against 60 for Washington. And, almost all these other categories are pretty equal, except for the rushing stuff. Penalties, both teams took 5. Steelers had 49 yards. Washington had 41. Turnovers, Steelers with 2, Washington with 1. But time of possession, 36-11 to 23-49. That formula still holds up, Run more plays. The worst kind of defense is too much defense. Control the clock. That stuff all adds up, especially on the road. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA, head to BetOnline today and get on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. So again, some of my notes, I've kind of already touched on some as we went through that. But I did think this was a pretty even game with 7 or 8 just huge game-turning plays throughout the game. I'd have to go back and count them, but in that neighborhood. And you know which ones they are. I thought Wilson's accuracy was quite questionable, and he did not have a great day throwing the football. And that's a little concerning at his age. But speaking of his age, his experience shows up over and over. And there's just not procedural problems and shooting yourself in the foot and all that kind of stuff. We saw Mike Williams debut in glorious fashion. Hopefully more of that. I mean, if he can, obviously, if he does that every week, I was about to say, but if he can get out there and make an impact down the field, even just weekly, that would be wonderful. Pickens was excellent. Steelers had 5 offensive drives, though, that didn't even get a first down. However, Washington only generated 2 first downs in the fourth quarter when it mattered most. Kind of how this kind of sums up this game a little bit. They contained Daniels, as I mentioned. It was his worst statistical game in the NFL. But he did manage the game well and look like a veteran out there, in my opinion, against a pretty good defense. I think this is a good defense, right? We think that. He got the ball out quickly. He was 12 of 16. That's for 153 yards in passes that were 2.5 seconds or less. This is what everyone's doing to the Steelers. They're getting the ball out of their hands quick. And he did set them up to get 3 short touchdowns on the ground. But that was the season low in total yards for the Commanders, 242, and a season high 6 punts for Washington. Again, Cam was awesome. As always, Watt was getting obscene amount of attention. And frankly, there was a blown holding call that was in the end zone late in the game that would have been a safety that would be talking about, oh, Watt had a big day. I'm not worried about him, don't get me wrong, but I'm definitely not worried about him. What am I talking about? I mean, but a little more splash in this game wouldn't hurt, or, but they're not having consistency. I mean, his impact is felt even if it's not in the score sheet, I guess is my point. Again, this was a really good showing by Patrick Queen. I couldn't be more encouraged by that. As well as Queen played, though, and they run a lot of play action and they manipulate you to open up the middle of the field. I thought the middle of the field defense was suspect / poor. slash could have been a lot worse too. There, from what I remember, there was a couple drops over the middle and some big plays that were just missed. Not even big plays, but chunk plays from Washington. As he was last year, Porter is now quickly getting up the ladder here in most penalized players. Needs to get better with that, but I don't know that he'll ever be great with it. It's just his style of game and responsibilities and length leads itself to penalties, unfortunately. He didn't have a great day. Jackson didn't have a great day. We'll see what the story is with his injury. It looks like, I'm not trying to break news, but my hunch is Highsmith's going to miss a little bit of time. I don't know the other injury situation. We'll definitely check that out. But please don't forget how good Terry McLaurin is. I'm sure a bunch of you have had him in your fantasy leagues and yeah, he's good, but he's not that great. His tape's awesome. He's just had horrendous quarterbacks. If he had if he had played with Mahomes his whole career, we'd be talking about him as one of the best receivers in the league. You know what I mean? He's that good. He's definitely a top 10 guy, in my opinion. So here's a next-gen stat on him. McLaurin faced Porter on 22 of his 34 routes, catching all 4 targets for 97 yards against Porter as the nearest defender. But he was only targeted 4 times on those 22 routes. Porter pressed McLaurin on 14 of those 22 routes, and he forced a tight window throw on 3 of the 4 targets. So the coverage wasn't always bad, I guess is the point. He was often very close, and they either squeezed one in. Daniels is so accurate and really impressive with the ball. And McLaurin's good. Pierre already gave him a hard time for that horrendous fake punt. Really bad. And he got picked on a lot when Jackson was out. Got to be a little bit concerned here with Pierre, but he is good on special teams. He's a break glass in case of emergency defensive player. Speaking of special teams, Skoranek was back. He's a really good gunner, and he makes an impact on special teams. He recovered the muffed punt. He was right there on both of them. He's a handful. He's fun to watch just as a gunner, and he is a helpful player. Cut another next-gen stat that I dug up here. Wilson was efficient on passes over 10 air yards. He was 5 of 10 for 119 yards, 2 touchdowns and interception. That's a plus 15.4 completion percentage over expectation. Since becoming the starter in week 7, Wilson's 3rd in completion percentage over expectation, 3rd in EPA in attempts over 10 yards. He was also pressured on a season high 47% of his dropbacks against the Commanders, and was only 3 of 11 when under pressure for 71 yards and a touchdown. But from a clean pocket, he was 11 of 17 for 124, 2 touchdowns and an interception. He was under a lot of duress, and this team rushes the passer better than I would have ever guessed in the offseason. Jaden Daniels mentioned how quick the ball came out. Very high percentage of them were under 2.5. Well, his average time was only 2.54. That's really quick. It's almost impossible to sack guys under 2.5. I shouldn't say that, but it's very difficult. That was his 3rd quickest time to throw this season, which is really impressive for a rookie as well, that he processes that quickly. He was 12 of 16 on those passes under 2.5 for 153 and a 62.5 success rate on such passes. He was just 5 of 18 though for 49 yards on dropbacks over 2.5. 28% completion percentage when the ball was in his hands for 2.5 seconds or longer. That's really all I got, except for Steelers are 7-2. Got Baltimore right around the corner. We'll do some injury research in the next 24 hours. I'm not feeling good about Highsmith, but I do think Herbig is due back. And wanted to give some of you credit, if not just Steeler Nation as a whole. I thought it was pretty awesome from my lazy boy. I wasn't there. On those last couple drives, Washington's driving, and it felt like Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium. You know what I mean? There's towels everywhere. A home field advantage on the road. is pretty impressive, and it's something that the Steelers generate a lot, you guys, the fans. So there you have it. I'll be back tomorrow. Take care.